an automated voice says, "Grid is live, initiating light cycle battle." We're in what looks like a computer-generated stadium, and a group of men wearing futuristic flight suits rise up from the floor. Running at speed, they leap up into the air, into a forward-leaning position. And as they do, the components of a motorbike form beneath and around them, which they then ride off at speed. Did that make any sense to you? Do you recognise the film?
I actually do, yeah. It's got to be Tron, right?
Yes, that's correct. Well done. Hello, I'm Rebecca Jackson, racing driver, TV presenter, and motoring expert. Welcome to Where's My Flying Car from IAM Road Smart, the podcast where we ask, are the promises of fantastical transport in science fiction possible? And if so, what are the facts? Today, I'm joined by Aaron Aluhanan, Assistant Professor of Future Transport, to talk about charge as you drive roads. Welcome back, Aaron.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you back. It's not just charge as you drive roads that I'm interested in. It's all wireless charging solution for electric vehicles, really. Let's start with the facts of where this technology currently stands. Wireless charging. Is it currently possible?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. I think it's very common in smartphones now. I think pretty much most phones have some kind of wireless charging capability. It's less common in cars at the moment, but yeah, it's absolutely here today.
Yes, I've definitely used it for my phone, but I haven't used it for anything else yet. What's the problem that it's trying to solve?
Essentially, cables, when you charge a vehicle, are heavy and they're cumbersome. And so it's really trying to solve the inconvenience of using a charging cable. And so that has two kind of benefits here. So either one is for convenience. So if you're in a situation where having to charge and sort of unplug and plug your vehicle in is inconvenient. So we did a project with taxi drivers. So taxi rank is a great example where cars are always kind of moving up a meter or so at a time. So that's a great example of where wireless charging or cable charging would be impractical. And then the second is for accessibility. So if someone is mobility impaired or uses a wheelchair, then having to kind of navigate and maneuver a cable to different sides of the car where it's different on each EV, it can be difficult and in fact inaccessible. So that's something that wireless charging would solve as well.
And in a nutshell, how does it work?
In essence, it's using a very kind of old principle called induction, but you have essentially two coils. One is in the ground and one is in the vehicle. And when they line up over each other, then when a kind of electrical current passes through one, it creates a magnetic field, which then transfers the energy into the other one. In a very kind of simple term, that's kind of, if you ever use like sort of tuning forks and you knock one and then you have a second one, and you can see that the second one starts to vibrate in time with the one that you've just hit.
Amazing.
That's the same kind of principle of how wireless charging works.
This leads us into a little segment that we like to call Are We There Yet?, where we look at how close we are to this technology becoming part of our everyday life. What different innovative EV charging solutions are being talked about and researched at the moment?
There's a few. I think the one we see most commonly is the sort of rapid charging. So the idea there being that you plug the car in and you try and supply as much power as possible, in a way kind of emulating how we refuel cars today. We try and do it as short as possible time. Then, of course, there's wireless charging, where you're sort of taking out that inconvenience of plugging in a cable and instead, taking out that barrier and improving accessibility. And there's some very innovative solutions. Very common in China is battery swapping. So, rather than having to recharge the battery that's fixed in your car, you simply just swap it for one that's ready to go. And then dynamic charging as well, where you kind of charge as you drive. So there's a few different things happening.
And are there any safety implications for driving as you're charging and moving along as the charging's happening?
Yes, there are safety considerations. Certainly because it's creating that kind of magnetic field around the car, it could cause issues for things like pacemakers and anything which is sensitive to that kind of electromagnetic radiation. But there are very, very strict regulations around that, particularly around how much power is outputted. So while there is a concern, it's well within engineering control to be able to make it safe. So Yeah, absolutely. It's something that has been thought of and is very carefully controlled for.
And what about the voltage? Because electric vehicles require quite high voltage, don't they? So how does that work from a scientific point of view if it's going through a magnetic field?
Yeah, so precisely for the reason of safety,
Hmm.
one of the disadvantages of wireless charging is that it can't charge at the same speeds as cable charging can. So whereas with a cable charge, you might be able to plug in and get, up to 80% of your battery in about half an hour, it would probably be perhaps like 3 to 4 times slower than that with wireless charging. And that's precisely because we're trying to limit how much electromagnetic radiation leaks out.
I
So
see.
that sort of limits how much we can provide to the car.
Presumably that's a good thing for the battery though, because if we do too many fast charges, that's putting a lot of strain on the battery.
Yeah, it's a really good point. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, charging the battery as fast as possible does increase the wear on it. So yeah, wireless charging would be a kind of more sustainable route for the battery health. Yeah.
Okay. And what will it take for wireless charging to become part of our infrastructure?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think again, a focus on sort of the use cases where it's most beneficial is the main thing. So I think particularly where you might have kind of a lot of space constraints, that perhaps there isn't the space on the pavement for a kind of a box with a cable coming out of it. That could, in the sort of highly dense areas could be a really good option for wireless charging. And of course, where we want to improve the accessibility of charging, if there's a wheelchair space or a disabled parking spot, then having wireless charging in those situations, again, I think that's where it could be really beneficial. And then of course there needs to be standardization. So, the kind of automotive manufacturers need to come up with the standard, because nothing would be more frustrating than coming up to a wireless charger and it not being the right standard for your vehicle. So having that kind of standardization would be, I think, a really key part of kind of making it more commonplace.
And it's quicker than a 7 kWh wall charger and absolutely quicker than a 3-pin plug.
Yes.
So parking in these spaces could be a good solution for slightly faster charging, although not as fast as the fast chargers as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it's, it has that capacity. So in the projects that we've worked on, where we worked on this taxi rank in Nottingham, we were achieving around 11 kilowatts. And at the moment, that seems to be kind of what it's topping out at, just because of the kind of safety implications.
Absolutely. And can it ever be affordable?
Again, yeah, I think if this is kind of deployed at scale and we kind of, are targeting those use cases, then I think absolutely. But I think it will need some kind of subsidization. But again, I think it comes down to, if we're very clear about where the benefits of this technology is from a kind of accessibility point of view, if it means, for example, with taxi drivers that they can maintain their trade, and there's a clear kind of economic argument there, then absolutely, the more these are installed, then the more commonplace they'll be, and yeah, it could be affordable. But I see it more in those kinds of situations than a kind of private, it will be a wireless charger at your home, because it doesn't, at least we don't think that kind of extra convenience of, having to just drive over the pad, it doesn't quite replace like the cable charging. Or it seems more convenient.
So it makes up the picture of charging. It's not the only solution.
Yeah, absolutely.
What happens if something gets in the way, something obstructs the charge? For example, an animal runs underneath the car, or someone drops something on the ground and it falls underneath?
Yeah, it's another really good question. So there are sort of two key safety systems in a wireless charging system, called foreign object and live object detection. And so these are absolutely critical with wireless charging. And so these are able to detect if there's any kind of object on the pad and stop the charging, either while it's in progress or before it even can start in the first place. So two really important systems that are essential.
So it's not going to be like touching an electric fence then?
Not at all.
Okay, good. And what could the world of EVs look like in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the big kind of barriers to electric vehicles is range anxiety. And I think, all these kinds of charging technologies that we've, just discussed, all of these give more options to kind of alleviate that fear of running out of power.
Mhm.
And so I think, as we develop these charging solutions and we create more ways in which people can access charging for more groups as well, then I think, as we move forward, it will become just more commonplace to not worry about range and not have to worry about stopping your journey to charge up, because there would just be those options available.
Yeah, sounds good. And how will this impact our cultural approach to EVs?
I think fundamentally, having that kind of confidence in the charging network is really important. And I think that lack of confidence is often what kind of prevents people from thinking, can I make the switch to an EV? What about when I have to make that longer journey? And so having these options, I think, would be a really important step towards that. And I know, from our research with disabled people, that's one of the things that a lot of people have told us is they just don't feel confident, having to maneuver a cable to varying different points in their vehicles. So, again, opening up EVs would be a profound kind of cultural impact if we can make it more accessible to more people.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of charging on the go and the tests that you've done with the taxi rank, is that something that's going to be implemented within the foreseeable future?
Yeah, I mean, so the results of that study were essentially that we found that, once the taxi drivers kind of got the idea of wireless charging, the fact that it's slower than cable charging, but, has this added benefit of being more convenient and it's essentially at their place of work at the taxi rank. Then we found that actually they were able to kind of manage their range better throughout the day, and kind of so were able to that certainly reduce their range anxiety. So yeah, certainly I can see that as being as kind of a really important sort of step towards that.
And has this now been implemented, or was that a test and still in test phase?
It's yeah, so those results are now kind of, being sort
Mhm.
of disseminated and now working out kind of, okay, what's the next step? And really, essentially, it's going to be about how do we work with those automotive manufacturers to make this a standard on the vehicle. So in this particular project, we had retrofitted those chargers. It wasn't something that was off the shelf available. So it's about understanding, okay, how do we work with these manufacturers so that it is an option for a taxi driver in the future, or perhaps even making it standard on these kinds of vehicles.
And when do you think that could happen? When could we see this actually happening on our roads and these charge pads?
I mean, it could be as early as tomorrow, really, because all the technology is there. And it's I think the beauty of the technology is it's not particularly new. It's just about understanding the right context for it. And I think now that we've done this work and there's kind of more understanding of wireless charging, it's more commonplace in kind of general technology now. I think there's a kind of stronger impetus towards, installing this more widely. So it could be as early as tomorrow if the right kind of drive is
That's
there.
exciting, isn't it? And what about if the vehicles are traveling faster? Could we see this perhaps happening an extra lane on the motorway?
And so I think the challenge of this, what we call kind of dynamic wireless charging, adds another layer of it, because exactly as you allude to, charging whilst moving is quite difficult. And the biggest challenge that we have to address with wireless charging is the alignment. So how well the two pads are aligned over each other determines so much about the efficiency of the charge. And so when you're moving, of course, there's a lot of variation there. So in terms of dynamic wireless charging, that's probably a little bit further kind of down the road.
Okay, so we want to be moving a little slower. Although with ADAS technology, ADAS technology with lane keep assist, etc., we might be able to perfectly place
That's a really good point. Yeah, perhaps if you can automate that process, then you could have charging highways. Yeah,
charging
absolutely.
lanes. How exciting. Forget the no, don't forget the M6 toll. We still love the M6 toll, but we're just going to have a section of that. Why not? Where we can charge our car. But we're a long way off from that. Initially, the vehicles need to be moving a lot slower, don't they?
Yes. So at the moment, completely static.
Completely
So,
static.
yeah, these
Okay,
are the-
so in the taxi rank, they are static while they're charging, and every time they move,
correct.
they're no longer charging.
So essentially, they move off one pad and onto another where they start the charge. And really, it's just all about the alignment, because if you're misaligned, the efficiency reduces. And when you're talking about the kind of amount of power that we're transferring in a charge, that can add up to quite a lot when it's kind of scaled over many vehicles. So that loss of efficiency versus cable charging is something that we can't really compromise with wireless charging. So having that alignment is critical. And so at the moment, the easiest way is with static charging, but that's something that obviously will develop in the future.
And where are the manufacturers with this at the moment? Would they be happy for retrofitting of wireless chargers, or are they in a position where they would really like to be doing this themselves?
It's a good question. I mean, at the moment, there are very, very few kind of original implementations of wireless charging from the automotive manufacturers. So it's clearly something there where the kind of business case or the use case hasn't yet kind of translated into the manufacturers themselves, and that's really up to our research to kind of make that clear.
And how it might impact their warranty.
So at the moment, this kind of retrofitting solution almost definitely would void warranties. So it's about, again, working with the manufacturers to have a first-party solution, which is also standardized across the manufacturers.
Yeah.
I think that'll be really key.
Or if it's manufacturer approved and fitted out the dealers, perhaps.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's exciting. Yes, I'm looking forward to this happening.
Yes.
What we're going to do now is what have we learned today? And I have 3 key takeaway points from our discussion. The first one is wireless static charging over a charging pad is close to being available for taxis and buses. Safety features built in mean that the charge will not start or it will cut charging if something goes under the car. And thirdly, with dynamic charging, charge as you drive roads, the biggest challenge is alignment. And although hypothetically possible, realistically, this is a long way off.
That's right. Yeah, it's a huge challenge for, when you're driving at speeds, motorway speeds, for example, to keep that car perfectly aligned, within a tolerance of, a couple of centimeters.
Bring it on, Aaron. Bring it on. I am up for that challenge.
Well, maybe with professional experience, it wouldn't be a problem. Yeah.
I want to end on a few quick fire questions that I'm going to throw at you.
Sure.
Okay, are you ready?
Yes.
Are EVs here to stay?
Yeah, absolutely.
And do you suffer from range anxiety?
It's interesting. Yeah, I did the kind of first longer journey in my EV just last week, where I had to publicly charge for the first time. And I have to admit, I was definitely nervous going into it. But, having done it now, it's not that big a deal. So
Great.
I think it's something that as we kind of learn to live with EVs and we increase the number of charging options that people have, then it will be a thing of the past.
So after you used that first public charging, were you then, okay, this is great, I'm confident?
I can take my car anywhere now, exactly.
A very emancipating feeling, that. Favourite piece of science fiction tech?
Thinking about transport, it would have to be some kind of teleportation device, I think. With my family in Australia, that would be very convenient, and it would be amazing if that was to come to life.
Yes, sign me up. Thank you, Aaron, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
We'll be back next episode where we'll be joined by Carla Jakeman to talk about robo-taxis.